will call our meeting to order. Privilege of the committee chair, committee members, legislators to discuss items of interest regarding department heads governed by this committee. I told everyone last month we were going to invite Scott and Ann to be with us tonight to discuss the auditor's position. Could I, before we do that, get Mike's resolution out of the way? Because you probably don't want to hang out for...
They're very enjoyable.
Liar.
That's better than Wheel of Fortune.
So we have a resolution amending the 2016 operating budget, eliminating senior account clerk typist position and establishing a receptionist position, Department of Social Services. Look for a sponsor and a second. Joe and Bob. Too fast, or are we good? All right, discussion. Oh yeah, you have a copy of the redo on your desk. There's some revisions to be made. Maybe Council, would you just review the revisions quick?
Sure. We had a couple of comments from the personnel officer about this resolution, just clarifying a few things. The third whereas clause from the original resolution was stricken. And then on the second page under the justification, the last sentence regarding the new receptionist position would also serve as backup for the clerk typist. That was taken out. And the last sentence under justification was changed to say, this resolution replaces a senior position and adds an entry-level receptionist position. And under financial impact, that was changed to read, there's a small financial savings with the elimination of the senior account clerk typist position. These changes were made to just clarify the duties of the new position.
Joe and Bob, or anyone else, if you don't have any questions, we'll move it. If you do, we will ask Mike. Barb?
Well, I just have a quick question. It says that there was a small financial savings, but it goes from 2388 888.0 to 2388.0. So is there?
That's the change. It's actually, if you look up in the resolution, it's the base salary is $28,656. And this is a position that just came open this year,
Okay.
actually this month, so that's what we'll be moving. It's
All
about a $5,000 savings.
First for the result. Thank you.
And it just gives more flexibility.
Anything else for Mike? If not, moving forward.
Yes.
Please.
Okay, that's our resolution. Mike, thank you very much. Last week, or last time we met, well, first of all, in the budget this year, we actually budgeted for an auditor's position. I believe we budgeted amount of, I think it was 30,000.
30,000.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I thought it would be very beneficial and I promised Scott and Ann we would not put them on the spot and ask opinions and where they were. What I really want them here for tonight is to give us a little history of how it's happened, how it's happening now, and what happens. I know there's been questions, and I spoke with Ryan about procurement policy, how that works. We all know that, Scott, you're under the executive branch, so it's actually under Matt, and you're under the legislative branch, so you're under us. If you could just give us some history, I think it would be very helpful. Once we have that history, if we decide that we want to make a change and do this, I think the next thing we should do is take a look at the 1987 auditor's position, which is probably outdated, form it to what we want, and then from there decide what we want this position to look like, what the money will be. I mean, we budgeted 30, doesn't mean we have to spend 30. And go from there. I think that's the best way to do it. Does everybody agree?
Yes.
So why don't you two, if you would take a few minutes to give us a little history.
Would you like I'll start? I have a few things written down here, and I don't want to forget, so I'll pass it around. Okay, and it does start with the departments. warcraft, which are inmates. We can go through OGS New York State contracts, federal GSA schedules, group purchasing organizations, which we're a part of, or as you mentioned earlier, piggyback in federal, state, and local government contracts. Now, if you're under those thresholds, you must follow a locally adopted procurement policy, and that sets different thresholds, which identifies which amounts and types of quotes that you have to get. Now, the reason I went through all that is, and last thing is, if you're, it states whether you got to get quotes or conduct an RFQ, request for quotes. Once all that's done, that's when I proceed on to the next step, and I would create a purchase order in the purchasing department. And very simply, I would send one out to a vendor, the ordering department, and then I keep one of my files. And then the department becomes the bill and ship due, and then they package everything up. Their receiving department, they get the purchase orders, package the invoice, package everything up, send it to auditing for payment. And then very quickly, the next scenario would be a department would just submit a voucher, and that goes directly to auditing. And that's where not only myself, but she needs to be very familiar with resolutions, existing contracts, and mileage also gets handled directly through auditing.
So you, and this is the way it's really always operated for you in the time that you've, I mean, this goes back.
It's always operated, let me go back, when I came on in the purchasing department, which sort of plays into this, there was a purchasing agent, myself was the buyer, and you had a clerical position. Through the years, we've eliminated the purchasing agent. Well, I served as an interim, I served as the purchasing agent, but also now back to the buyer. We've eliminated first the position and then the clerical help. But we've also, in the past, we mentioned, we've had the Meadows and the City of Amsterdam. I used to oversee their purchasing too. So with the absence of that, but what we took on, I'm doing those duties is what I'm getting to.
So you've performed, what you've done now, what you just explained is you've performed on behalf of the executive branch
Correct.
what needs to happen. Then it gets passed over to Ann, who's in essence performing what happens for us as legislators. So Ann, if you could give a little history, go back to whatever.
Well, since I've been here 20 plus years, I have worked under an administrator, I worked under an auditor, and I now work under a committee. When the stuff does come into my office, I double check his work as well as make sure all of the backup, packing slips, everything was done properly, it's per resolution, per contract. When it's a voucher, it's usually something that's just mileage or something like that, doesn't have to go anywhere. Basically, I'm the one that does all the clerical work, I guess you would call it, put it all together, and then I pass it on to whoever at that point is signing.
So stop there for just a moment. So Scott has done his job. In essence, for the legislative branch, now you're checking to make sure he's also followed the procurement policy. Let's stop there just for a minute and make believe, you told me this happens a couple times a year maybe, but you two have a discussion and you may say, geez, that coffee cup, maybe it should have been done that way. Scott says, well, no, here's why. At that point, whether it was the old system or this system, you would, Scott, go to the chairman of the board, or you would have went to the executive now. You at that point would come to the chairman of the legislature, or back then it could have been, you know, and then they need to have a discussion and say, oh no, we did it right, or we didn't do it right, or whatever, right? Now comes us as a committee, because our charter says that we have this committee of 3, finance chair of the, and then we come in and do our thing. And I guess my question is, and this is what I'm having difficulty with here, what is it when we put an auditor position on, and help us get through this, what is it that the auditor is going to do now that we aren't doing, or would he or she be replacing? I mean, we still got to have the committee according to the charter. That doesn't go away regardless. But what will that auditor do? Check over the two of you, or what? Explain it, because I'm getting stumbled up with it.
From my experience, the auditor will be doing
to chime in here, because we have to also decide what it is we would like this auditor to do above and beyond what you just said. And that's what I'm trying to pull from you is there other, I mean, we can't have the person do something other than auditing, so are there some other, because Ryan was trying to explain to me what he thought the auditor's position would bring to the table. You know, more, you know, he was here to explain what he was telling me because I thought he was doing a good job convincing me. But what is it that we as a group would like to see more so done than what's happening, I guess is my question. First Barb and then Duke.
Okay. I just wanted to say, in the beginning, when we changed from having an auditor to not having an auditor, I was kicking and screaming because I wanted to keep our auditor in the olden days. And I actually came and wasn't on the auditing committee, but I was an obstinate child. And since then, the last 2 years, I was part of the committee, and you taught me a lot. And we are the stewards, so learning so much of how the money is spent and all of the backup documentation, that you explain how all of the vouchers are paid and where the money's going, and how both of you work together. That's our job. That's what we're doing. That's why I didn't vote for this. But that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate the job the auditor does. And I'm sorry for my voice. I think that what Bondeo Group has done for the county has been fantastic. And now I'm going to stop because Martin was...
Duke was next and then Martin.
Yeah, I think the gap here is not in the way the work is being performed by these two employees, but in our responsibility as to do the audit as legislators. I think it's not just our responsibility, but our ability. I think that we lack, certainly people on this legislature do not have any of the requirements we see here for an auditor. So it should be self-evident that an auditor would be doing a little more than simply reviewing the work put before us and signing our names. And the job classification and duties to be performed by an auditor are, as I said, they're now evident before us, and we see the difference. And I don't think that any of us here as legislators have the ability to truly perform in the capacity of an auditor. And I know we have a statutory obligation to serve as the audit committee, but still that's why you hire staff to do that, so that it's done properly. And that the oversight alone, I think, is invaluable. I would add, not to beg the question here, but there's a reason that auditors exist and are hired in this capacity. But it's certainly not relative to the work that's being performed. I'm talking about the work that is performed by the legislature, not these employees.
So of the auditors, I'm just looking at the old one, and I don't know if you have a copy of the old one.
I didn't see one.
What I'm looking through in this, and I'm not saying that we would duplicate this by any means, I'm just saying of those activities that are being done now, of those, what are you doing? Are you doing all of these? So are we doubling up? Is that what you're saying? Is we would have somebody looking over what she's doing? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying
that in fact is the specific purpose of the auditor, to ensure consistency with all of the things listed here, whether they're contracts, and I know that they're doing it, okay? But when we show up for as committee members, we are signing off that they're doing that. We don't know that. We don't know that. We're not looking at things in that capacity. And I have to keep saying this because I don't want to be misunderstood with respect to the work that is being performed. Okay, but really, it's not the work that they're doing, it's the work that we're doing. I'm talking about our capacity. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing, I'm sure. Okay, we don't know that they're going to be there forever. big stack that's put in front of us, and we sign our names repetitively. And I've made this example before, but dollars to donuts, we're gonna say, oh, you didn't sign this one, Duke, okay? Because we're just going through them. And we have no ability to conduct an audit. All we're saying, when we sign, now we're saying is, yes, indeed, we do believe that what they did is correct. That is what you're signing. You're signing off on their work. I'm saying that we need somebody in a professional capacity to advise us.
What do we do?
Auditors are in fact there for oversight.
What are then where I get confused is the auditors that do this now, what happens to them? The auditors that we have now,
No, that's a different.
because they're auditing
Yeah,
the whole
that's,
county.
yeah, oh, that's other work, right?
So you're saying that they're not actually, this is what helps clear it up a little bit, because I thought that they were auditing to make sure that they were doing it properly by doing sampling.
I'm sure they do. They might spot check, but we're talking about an auditor who would go over each of those purchases, okay, and then advise that we should sign off on it.
Martin, you were next.
I think the auditor position would add some benefit to what we do. I don't think the auditing committee would go away as the charter stipulates. One thing I envision the auditor doing is, one, auditing what is being done, but two, also giving us a monthly report or such of where we financially stand. Every single one of us has asked for monthly reports. What has been spent? What is left in the budget?
Isn't that a department head's job?
Counties,
Well,
giving it to us.
yes, that is, but, yeah, no, it's posted on the website, but it isn't user-friendly, and everyone looks at it and goes, I can't read this. You've got a bunch of negative numbers in there. It obviously is not accurate. An auditing position would help clarify those questions for us and give us advice. Should we hire this person, this position over this position, and give us advice on where we receive the most financial benefit and the direction we should go. That's what I see this position.
So as an auditing committee, help me straighten this out. If we had an auditor, obviously the auditing committee still exists. What would our function be? Would we still go in every Tuesday?
You would be signing off on what the auditor does, or making sure the auditor's doing what they're doing.
So it sounds like we're still gonna do the same exact thing. We would just hire somebody and pay him $30,000.
No, no. You would probably sign off on one document saying you reviewed the auditor's report. The auditor would be the one signing 3 times over in each voucher and everything. The auditor would be doing what we're doing as an audit committee, or what we've done as an audit committee. The audit committee would then come in and say, okay, I've reviewed the auditor's report. Yes, this looks good. Tom Quackenbush approved, Terry Beniak approved, Bob, whoever's on the committee approved.
This is why I don't show up at those things, and I don't feel capable of doing it.
So when we've had auditors in the past, and I'm not saying it needs to be like it was, I'm just saying you've heard this discussion, but for instance, Pat, Marco, who else?
2 auditors.
That's 2. Are they, because this was obviously this job spec was in when those guys were here, is a lot of what you're hearing what they were doing, or is a lot of what you're hearing what we were doing? I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying if we're gonna do this, we need to do it right going forward, and I like what Martin's saying and what Duke's saying, but I wanna make sure that's what's...
You were in office when there was an accounting auditor.
We didn't have a committee of, we didn't go down there.
You didn't, exactly,
No.
exactly.
I'm in town.
But it was a different form of government.
Somebody did, it's like you never heard the Pope sing, he asked people to do that for him.
But what would take place? Were they signing like we did?
Yeah.
Or were they actually auditing, reviewing? That's what I don't want to get back into. I don't want to have an auditor that's going to do just what we're doing now. If we're going to have an auditor which acting in a function like you're saying, that's fine. But not just to do what we're doing. If we are, it's somebody that's doing something for 2 hours a week. You know, that doesn't make sense for me, that doesn't make sense to hire somebody that's just going to do what we're doing now, and that's initially. I agree with you.
That's the point precisely. No professional auditor is just going to go in there and sign off without looking to see if there's consistency with the award process.
And I would just, 2 points. One, it's up to us to make sure that the person is doing what we would like them to do when we're drafting the position, to expand on what has happened. And 2, with the audit committee signing off, it would be like the chairman signing off on Cheryl's time off or Ann's time off, or it would meet your duties. You wouldn't be sitting there for 2 or 3 hours.
Oh, Barb and then Bob.
I just want to say, there's been times I haven't actually signed because I didn't agree. So I do look at them and I ask annoying questions, probably. It's okay, it's all right, because I care what my name.
Well, the last couple of weeks, we've stopped a few from going through.
And they've stopped, I know that many times, even last year, they stopped vouchers from going through, and they've done a remarkable job. So,
But the reason I'm stopping them, if I see and not to argue that
you're
point,
doing a good job.
I'm not an auditor. I stop them probably for a different reason than an auditor stopping them. I'm stopping them because I don't understand how something could cost this, or you know what I'm trying to say. And whenever I've asked you a question, it's been more based on not because I'm an auditor, but because I've stopped it because I wondered what the purchase was for, or I trying to think of an example. I asked you today about tires. And I said, geez, you know, how was this done? But it wasn't really because I was an auditor. It's because I had a question on the...
But Tom, how much of that comes under our purview? Should we be asked questions about tires? There are department heads who decide what kind of tires should be purchased, right? We've already allocated the money for the purchase. The purpose of the audit is to ensure that the purchase was done in the correct manner.
And that's to your point, I wasn't doing that. I didn't do that today.
Right.
I was doing it,
Exactly.
I think I'm agreeing in that sense that I was
But when
doing
you signed your name, you're saying, yes, this purchase was properly made.
based on what, because they're both there every week, and if we have a question or whatever, we would go to them, and I'm assuming, maybe I shouldn't, you've done your job. If you didn't, the executive branches, I have faith that you've done your job, so now I'm signing saying, yeah. I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying that's what's...
And it's a good bet that they have done their jobs correctly, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Oh, Bob, I'm sorry.
You know, look, I'm not educated as being an auditor, but I do my due diligence as I feel I'm responsible as a legislator and being appointed to that duty at that time. And there's been times I've asked that, you know, why is this, where's the back of this? We're showing the hours of this, why is the mileage of this?
approach at all.
What's that?
I think we do need an auditor because we don't know what we're doing. We don't know how to audit. Perform an audit. We don't know how to perform an audit. I think that's exactly the point.
But before we hire someone to be an auditor, we need to know what our expectations are.
Well,
We need to be familiar with it, and we need to establish the premise of it, the process of it, and justify.
Well, that'll come, but first we have to come to a consensus that we want to do it.
Yeah, and I don't want to be tied to, listen, if we come to the consensus that we want somebody here full-time to do exactly what you're saying, I don't want to be tied to 30 grand. If it's, I want to get somebody competent, capable, if it's 60 grand, if it's 50, whatever it is, because, again, I don't want to do, but we have to lay out that groundwork first of what you want, and I think the price tag comes after, and lay out the groundwork of how much we expect of this person, how long this person would spend doing this. I don't know that I can answer that question, but we got to figure that out.
But we're not breaking any new territory here. That's common procedure to have an auditor. The county had an auditor for years.
Well, the county had auditors for years, but they were performing in a way that we're performing now.
I don't think so. I think that,
Well, I mean, that's what I've been told. That's what she just said.
I don't think the auditor just showed up and signed off on those purchases.
All right, if I can just speak
Go
instead
ahead.
of raising my hand.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm all about compromise. And if you wanted to bring someone in 1 or 2 days a week for a couple hours and pay them hourly, I absolutely, one thing I learned probably my first year was compromise. I would be willing to do that.
I agree, Barb, but I guess where I'm going with it is, I don't know if 2 hours gets us what we need if we're talking about doing what Duke's saying.
Or 2 days a week.
Or 2
I think
days.
it's some of the things that Duke's saying has merit. I'm more of the line of our fiduciary responsibilities. And whenever I see Martin's hand go up, I want to listen to what he has to say, but I just want to.
I had Terry and then I had Mark.
Listen, with all due respect to everyone here, I just want to make it clear, the last 2 years, I feel we had competent auditing done. I believe the first year Martin was on it, the second year also. I think out of all the legislators on the board, Martin's got the most background in that type of auditing or accounting work. And I also want to say that this came from the Board of Supervisors. And I can see why, because on each town, it's the town council that reviews the vouchers and the claims. And then they, if they're okay with it, then they pass it as a resolution to pay all those claims or vouchers. So I can see where it came from. So obviously on the town level, there's some competence there. I'm not quite sure if it's the lack of competence on our level. I would be open-minded to looking at a auditor. However, I'm not here to establish another layer of government, meaning that the process was streamlined and now we're just going to add to it. If we do hire an auditor, it's my personal feeling that that auditor, 4 or 5 hours, 1 day a week, that's it. Pay that person by the hour, but I don't think their time, there's no...
But Terry, with all due respect, how do we put a time frame on something that we haven't crafted yet? If we come back and craft...
Well, we actually did craft the time, because we've basically said they're not going to do more than us.
No.
If we still keep the same.
Exactly.
same
No, I
system
agree
in
with you
place.
wholeheartedly there. What I'm saying is if you move to a position of auditor that's actually going through, double checking everything that Scott and Ann have done, like Duke said, I don't know that you're gonna do that 2 hours a week, and I don't know that you're gonna do it with $30,000.
Right.
I don't know that I would sit here and go, there's a lot of bills. You're doing an immense amount of work. And I mean, I don't know, you know, you had said to me tonight, earlier, and you said it to me in the office, that in the past, they basically have done what we've done. If it's gonna be beyond that, and they're gonna review everything you do, that's fine. We need to list that, and then come up with what we think is fair compensation. I just don't know that we can get somebody to do that 2 hours a week, or 4 hours a week, to do what Duke's describing. This may be a position that is actually a full-time position, much more than $30,000 a year, to do what I think he's asking. I don't know, I'm not an auditor, but I can only imagine. You're working, the two of you are working 40 hours a week, correct? 35 hours a week, 70 hours. Now, I know that that person is not going to go out and do what Scott's doing, because Scott's doing the legwork. But that person certainly would be now auditing every single thing you guys do, not just sampling, right? Auditing everything. I don't know how they could do what you do in 70 hours in 4 hours. They wouldn't. They could do what we're doing right now in 4 hours, but that's not what I'm hearing Duke say. Duke is saying, and Martin, I think, is saying, I don't want to speak for you two, but I think you're saying actually going through and auditing every single thing that's being done in this county, so that reports can be generated, so that they're looking over every single thing that you're doing. Otherwise, why have that? And I agree with Duke. You would do that, the whole thing, not just a part of it. Martin?
I've lost my train of thought.
Right. So I guess the question is, do we, I don't think anybody wants to move forward and hire an auditor that's going to do what we're doing right now. Is there some feeling out there that we would like to put together a job description to then try to evaluate the description of what they're going to do, which is probably everything that's encompassed here, and then put a price tag on that?
You know, you also have external auditors that we hire that are doing the same thing.
Well, they're sampling, I think, is what Duke was saying, is they're sampling. He got it back, go ahead.
No, those auditors are required because we're a municipality, we need an external auditor. We're not RFP for it. If what we're doing as an audit committee is what the auditor's going to do, and you're saying that they can't do it in 2 hours, but yet on average, we spend 2 hours there a week. If they're going to truly audit, they need to be a part-time person, at least 15 hours a week, so that they can go through and reconcile, because that's what auditing is. We're reconciling. It's not the legwork that Scott's doing,
Right.
the legwork that Ann is doing. They're not calling up people and saying, oh, I'd like to place an order on 50 cases of ballpoint pens and blah, blah, blah. They're going to be, okay, we have an RFP for this. This is what we approved. This is what the bill is. There's a discrepancy.
Well, they gotta do that, but they gotta also make sure that procurement procedures being followed. They're gonna have to call the department heads and say, did you do this? If they're just gonna take those two's word for it, that's all we're doing.
No, it's not. They're going to check, did we follow the RFP? They're gonna have to know if we followed the RFP. They're going to then say, okay, the RFP approved that we are going to buy 50 ton of concrete from XYZ Concrete Company, and then we get a bill in here and we bought 60 ton of concrete. We didn't approve that.
Well, how do they know the procurement policy was followed?
Because we awarded the RFP. We are the ones to make sure that we award the RFP, or the executive,
saying anybody's doing anything wrong now. You're just saying,
Well,
as a fiduciary responsibility, we have somebody checking what they're doing. That's what you're saying.
well, yeah, but if we need to do more,
Mark.
I'm going to be very frank, I'm very disappointed with Bounty. We awarded a contract for them to do our auditing. Have they contacted anybody on the auditing committee or on the budget and finance committee? When I was budget and finance chair 2 years ago, and we awarded the contract, no phone calls, no nothing. We're the people in charge of the county finances. And then we go and we give them another small contract to do this dashboard. That was last year. Why are we going to continue to give them money if they're not communicating back as to where that money is going? I'm okay with, talking with people and seeing if there is area to improve. And Bonadeo, they're new to the county now. Maybe the people we need to be talking to is Weston Company. They audited us for 3 years. Or maybe we should go to whoever was the one before them and see, they know our dirty laundry per se. This Bonadeo, they're new. Do they know what we need?
All right, tell me where you want to go. I think we should try to take some, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but I think that if we're serious about this, we need to describe, I don't know if I'm the person, but somehow we need to describe what we're looking for, right? We need to describe what it is we're going to expect somebody to do. In a nutshell, I think it is review everything. If it's just going to be piecemealed out and it's going to be a sampling, I don't think that's what that's not going to do anything more than what I'm doing.
but who's gonna be that person, I guess?
What do you mean?
To figure out that you're just gonna give it to personnel.
Well, I mean, I think it's got to be us as a whole. We have to figure out what it is we want. I mean, I think Duke has described it best as far as what we're actually looking to have this person do. I know what I'm looking for now. If I'm going to go that route, I want to know somebody's looking over every single thing they're doing because they're my person now. They're my person that's double checking. That's the reason we want to do it. If we're not going to do that and we're just going to scribble on a line, I can do that right now and spend nothing.
I would like to say, and it's very rare that I wouldn't put myself as the dog in the race, but I think Martin would, he has the insight in this. Not that you don't, Tom, because I think...
I don't.
Thank you. Martin does have an insight, both from,
Well,
accounting.
he came up with a couple of good ideas. He talked about the reporting and the...
Could save us $5,000 a year. Person's already gonna be here looking at the numbers, they could save us $5,000 a year that we're giving to Bonadeo to do the dashboard. If we expand on what the auditor's gonna do. An auditor, it's, look it up in the
Well, we could
dictionary,
ask
what
them.
the auditor's
Sure.
going to be doing.
So some exploratory options, what we want, what's needed, what's here.
You know, Daryl Puritan, I don't know if you're all familiar with him. He was here a long time ago. And Daryl, I had a lot of confidence in. He was with Marvin at the time, and then he went on his own. But that's a person that maybe I could reach out to ask, could you help me out in formulating something?
Maybe if he were to come to a meeting, talk to us in one of our workshops.
I mean, I'm sure he'd be willing to do that. And I'm not talking about hiring him. I'm talking about, I've worked with him since 1990 something, and I'm not saying that I'm talking about him as an auditor. I'm saying help us come up with what we're looking for as that safeguard for us as a legislature. The last thing we want is the state controller to come in and zap on us for doing something wrong and not following our procedure. Because it does fall on us, it ends up falling back to us.
And it's not that I don't have faith in Bonadeo. I just, the auditing committee has, and the legislature would approve transfers so that we can pay this firm and that firm and this firm.
But again, when we talk about Bonadio, or whether it was formerly Marvin or whatever, they're the ones doing that outside audit. That's not what we're talking about.
No, but
They're making sure that everything is in line with the state.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about here, correct?
right.
It's not what we're talking about. That's
But
another discussion.
But my point was just to ask their advice, that's all. You know, but anyways, whatever the legislators want to do.
Well, you know, tell me.
If I could make a non-legal suggestion?
Yes.
Sometimes a useful thing is to poll other counties. We could have Cheryl contact some other clerks, ask what other counties do. Do they have a full-time auditor? Do they have an auditor committee? What are the duties of their auditor? If they have an auditing committee, how do they correspond? And maybe also have her reach out to Daryl and have him come to a committee meeting. And then we can get some information from Cheryl and move along that way.
Let's not reinvent the wheel.
I'm always a fan of that.
No, but I think what you're saying is key, because we want to know what they're doing to safeguard what they're doing. Is it simply committee what we're doing now, or is it actually an auditor that's auditing everything?
Right.
Megan has a lot of experience with Daryl from the insurance company.
Come on, Joe.
Say that, I didn't hear you.
Megan has a lot of experience with Daryl from the insurance trust. He worked with her law firm, right?
Yeah, I like that.
He's a good man.
He's very thorough, he's very,
Joe never misses a moment to bring up the insurance.
all right, so we're gonna give Cheryl a task, Chair,
Okay, sure.
and we'll maybe contact, we'll try to put something together that looks like and hopefully,
I just want to say thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
we really do
And
appreciate
I hope
it.
I made myself clear. It's not a reflection.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about what we're doing, not what you're doing. I've always found county employees to be competent.
Right.
Really
No,
honest.
that's, yeah, and I explained that before I even asked, or when I asked them to come. This wasn't to shed light on anything you're doing wrong at all. We think you're doing a great job.
They do a remarkable job, and we just want to do what's best for the county here, so. But we thank you for coming. You didn't have to bring your bodyguard. Oh, you're right.
See how much they love you when you show up for a race.
Oh, and by the way, just so everyone is, and I'm sure everybody's good with this, but Matt, I talked to Matt about the fact that they were coming. They're not department heads that normally come to meetings, and we wanted to be able to either compensate or flex time the time they've spent with us tonight. And I don't think anybody here has an issue with that.
Absolutely.
No, we thank you again.
Thank you.
You're all set with us?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, so if there's nothing else under personnel, I'd look for a motion to adjourn, Bob, Joe, and we'll move into our finance